Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing great this fine December morning. Hope everyone that is in the USA had a great Thanksgiving. I had 28 people at my house, all family, just a couple of ancillary ones. Niece's boyfriend's parents were here, so good times, great times actually. Lots of good food. Turkey, as always, all the good stuff. Hold on one second. I don't like the way that I look right now. Let's go a little brighter. There we go. That makes me happy. All right. Hope everyone's doing well. Is this Whitney or Penny watching? Whitney or Penny watching? Jonathan, good morning. Happy belated birthday. Dan Campbell, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Was the first one to get in the chat. Y'all, I hope you're doing well. Last week was good. Lots of time with the family, with the kids. Kids were home, son, daughter, and son's fiance. So that was good times. This week, let's see, what are we working on? So I've been testing the new Color Prime Chroma ink, and I had some issues with the film. My film I don't print much, so my film kind of went bad from sitting out for so long. I was warned that might happen, and it did happen. So I ran a couple other issues with it, but I got it working, got it printing quite nicely. Made my son and his fiance some. There we go. Some graphics. They're big D&D fans, and they have leveled up to fiance. So if you don't know role-playing games, you level up your character. That's a 20-sided die. Anyway, nerd stuff. But I made that. So it's printing fine now. We're good to go. But yeah, so good times. Small gathering. Made too much food. Yeah, I think everybody makes too much food for Thanksgiving. I think that's kind of like par for the course because everybody just always makes too much food. Now, my father loves his second dinner, so we always make extra to make sure there's second round of Thanksgiving dinner. So yeah, anyway, what's happening, Carding Mania up there in the UK? Now, question for you non-USA folks. Obviously in America, we kick off the holidays with Thanksgiving. That's kind of like, well, honestly, I started listening to Christmas music in November, but is like the end of November, like in the UK, other countries, do you kick off Christmas season like December 1st, or what's that look like? Also, I've been wondering, so obviously I'm not a print shop. And when I was at Superstore, we noticed like kind of a fall off for a lot of folks like December 15th. Do you guys notice in your print shops, or do you guys go dead? Like once December 15th hits and you're not ever going to get something out for Christmas, do you notice you slow up a lot? Is it like really, really busy this time and then it slows up after the 15th? Just wondering. Let me know in the chat if you guys have like a hard, fast, like section that is slower than normal. But anyway, while you guys are answering that, let's get into the topic for today, which you guys saw on the thumbnail. If you didn't see the thumbnail, I had a lovely nozzle check that had the kind of the color bleeding into it. So let me show you over here on Photoshop what that was kind of looking like. So this, if you guys ever gotten that before, where your like cyan is bleeding into your magenta, or your magenta is bleeding into your cyan, or black into the yellow, all that kind of stuff. Most of you guys have probably experienced that before. And it's usually caused, well, what makes it happen is just literally the little nozzles, they're right next to each other. And so the cyan is bleeding into the magenta, or the black's bleeding into the yellow. Usually it's those two combinations, depending on the ink order of your printhead. Usually it's when they're like right next to each other. So usually your black and yellow are next to each other in the head layout. Usually your cyan and magenta. So those will bleed into each other. And the biggest reason that happens, or what causes that to happen, is usually well, two primary reasons. One, if you're wet capping, if you wet cap, you might get all sorts of other colors mixed into it. But if you're not wet capping, it's usually some residual ink that's on the actual print head that's moving across because there's some extra negative pressure. For those of you who aren't aware, the dampers that sit on top of your print head, little guys that look something like this, they have a little diaphragm. Let me see if I can get it to focus on that and not my face. There it is. This little diaphragm here, that's got a little spring on it. And that is creating negative pressure at the print head. And if you don't if you don't have good negative pressure, like the damper failed, then you would have ink kind of run out of your print head. What happens is you can sometimes get too much negative pressure with your damper, and that will cause the print head to kind of like suck ink back up from the capping station. And if you wet cap, it is really very, very common to happen. But it can even happen when you don't wet cap. I don't wet cap my machine. Now, some of you are like, Jeremy, how are you surviving not wet capping? I've never been a huge proponent of wet capping. I understand some of y'all need to do it. And if you need to do it, you need to do it. But Robin, should we not be wet capping? No, I'm not saying you shouldn't be wet capping. However, I don't think it's necessary depending on your setup. I know like the capping station, the quality of the capping station top, that plastic part that actually I think I have an extra one. Let me see. Let me see if I have an extra one. Hold on one second. Do I have an extra capping station top? I don't. You know what? Let's see. Let's see if I can get my phone to connect to my computer. And I will show you what, well, you guys know what the capping station top is, right? Yeah, okay. I'm not going to bother trying to connect that because it wasn't connecting earlier. If your capping station top is aligned properly and it is a good rubber material, it will seal up your print head perfectly fine. Also, you have to have like a good like capping station pump that isn't going to let air in and stuff like that. So you need to have it sealed off properly. If it's not sealed off properly, that's why a lot of people feel the need to wet cap. Early days of DTF, the machines were not good and the capping stations were garbage and the alignment was off. And so people had to wet cap just to survive. And there are still people that swear by wet capping. So I'm not ever going to tell you don't wet cap. That's going to be a situational thing. Depends on your setup, what you have. But if your capping station tops, if the rubber on them is like a hard rubber, it may not seal as good. And you also, when you look under this, your capping station top should be depressing about 30 to 40%. I've been in shops where it's barely depressing at all. And that's not creating any kind of a good seal around it. And so you've got to create that good seal to not wet cap. Now, again, that being said, even when I don't wet cap, I can get colors bleeding through. And that's because this damper is not full enough. For these dampers to work really well, to give you good ink flow, good nozzle checks, good consistent ink coming out of it, you need these dampers to be at least halfway full. They'll never be 100% full because even when you fill it up, this little spring that's in here is going to release and pull some air back in. So if your dampers are like this shop I was in was barely up to like a fifth, and that is literally basically what's happening is don't have enough pressure from the ink to counteract the negative pressure that this damper is putting on the printhead. You need some negative pressure, otherwise they would just run ink everywhere. Like when the CMYK dampers fail, you know they failed because white ink is running everywhere. So when you look at your damper, you cannot prime these things to fill up more than like maybe 30% using just a simple load ink from your Hosen Soft. The only way to get the damper to really prime completely and well, and this is obviously more specific to Chinese-based machines, the Epsons, the CMYKs, those are going to function a little bit differently, the roll-ins. But basically what I do is I will remove the damper, I turn it upside down, and I will use my syringe to pull the ink through it. So if I can get it to focus on that, let's see. Watch what happens. Whoop, there it goes. So you will notice that the damper kind of depresses in because I'm creating that suction. When I release it, a little bit of air shoots back in, which is why you're never going to get to 100% full on your damper. But you want to make sure this is at least 75% full. When that's 75% full, you now have the right positive pressure from the ink to counteract the negative pressure. So in most cases, when I've seen that bleed through, when you're not wet capping, it's because you don't have enough ink in the damper to balance those pressures out. So it's literally sucking little bits of air and little bits of other ink up into it. That's another thing that can dry these things out, is just if it's pulling air back in because it's got negative pressure on it, you're toast. That's the other reason why with the ink containers, if you don't have an air valve, for lack of a better term, a little air relief valve, you sometimes have to crack open the lid of the container to get it to release the pressure on the backside. It's all about pressure with these things, guys. Like if your ink containers are not at the right height, it's not going to create the right amount of pressure to fill this up. And this is not going to create the right amount of pressure to actually feed through your printhead properly. So, and I can see it when you wet cap, even with these full. So how do you get rid of that like weird color bleed on the nozzle check? How do you get rid of, that ugliness right there? First things you want to do is make sure your damper is completely full, or as full as it can get. So 50 to 75% full. The circular part of your damper needs to be at least 50 to 75% full. And then you need to do a couple cleanings. And most of the time, a load ink and a cleaning will fix it. Now, I will tell you that doing multiple cleanings puts more wear on your head than doing a load ink and a single cleaning. I am a huge proponent of a load ink and a single cleaning versus multiple cleanings, because with a strong clean, it will pull a little bit more ink through, but sometimes you need more than what the cleaning is going to pull through the printhead. So I tend to do a load ink of about 12 to 15 seconds at most. Sometimes I can get away with less if I've printed more recently. But a load ink of about 10 to 15 seconds. And it's actually only pulling ink for about 5 seconds of that, maybe a little less, because when you start that loading procedure, it doesn't actually start drawing ink through till about the 5 to 6 second mark. So 10 to 15 second load ink, and then a normal or light cleaning. That's what I'm usually doing to get started in the morning. So if you're doing a whole bunch of cleanings, I would encourage you to do a load ink first and then a cleaning. And then if it's still really bad, do another load ink and a cleaning. If it's like almost there, do just a normal cleaning, and that usually gets you going for getting rid of any of that excess ink that's kind of worked its way through. So that's generally the cause, and the easiest way to fix it is literally just make sure your damper is full. Now, your damper could be failed. You could have a bad damper, and that's totally normal and totally possible. And it's not that because like if it fails, it's going to be running out a little bit, so it's going to be more likely that you're going to get transition over into that other ink channel. Dampers, I saw somebody asked about dampers. There it is. How often should we replace wiper blade, damper, capping station, ink lines? Ink lines, never. When they get clogged, ink lines are not really considered a consumable part that you need to swap out. And also it's a pain in the butt to swap out ink lines. I will be the first one to tell you that because I have done it. There are others that watch this channel that have done it. If Jerome happens to be watching, he's done it. He knows it's not a fun process. So ink lines, no. Capping station tops, those more than likely you get a failure either in the spring or it gets clogged because there's kind of like a sponge material, and so it can dry out and get clogged over time. Those are not as regular. Those are kind of like an as needed. Dampers generally have a lifespan of about 6 to 9 months, depending on usage. You might have it last less, you might have it last more. So just know that roughly those are expected to last 6 to 9 months. If you start having issues with either ink leaking or that transfer of ink, and you've done all the other things, you can probably switch out your damper. Or if you're having like ink starvation or other kind of ink feeding issues, you should replace that. If you're getting bad nozzle checks, like you cannot get a good, strong nozzle check, it could be that your dampers failed. It's not always the case, but it could be, especially if the nozzle checks are kind of moving around. There could be maybe air getting in on the bottom side because maybe you had leaked some ink at some point and then it caused this to not seal as nicely onto the printhead. That could be bringing air into the system. But yeah, 6 to 9 months roughly is the age or life expectancy of the dampers. Again, you may have less because you print so much. You may have more because you don't print as much, or maybe because your system just ran really nicely and these lasted an eternity. Wiper blade, that is not really, there's not a consumable lifespan of that. However, wiper blade is the only thing touching your printhead. So if your wiper blade looks a little bit suspect, a little sus, as the kids like to say, replace that freaking wiper blade. And I get a little emphatic on that one because it is literally the only piece of your equipment that is touching your printhead. And it is the nastiest thing on every machine I ever see. So please take care of your wiper blade, specifically the top. The bottom, it can get a little nasty. But wiper blade, again, that one's not a specific life expectancy. It is a rubber piece, so it should last quite a while. If it's well maintained, it will. One of the things is like the cleaning material, the cleaning solution you guys are using could be drying out all that rubber stuff. And so I'm gonna kind of mess with your heads a little bit because y'all are using high alcohol content cleaning stuff a lot of the time, and that will dry out rubber parts. So your capping station tops could be drying out. Your wiper blade could be drying out because of the cleaning solution you're using. Specifically the DuPont cleaning solution, that stuff's crazy because it never dries. I actually spilled some once and I came back like days later, it was still there. So yeah. How do you know when you need to change a wiper blade? When it looks nasty. Let me think how to explain that. So obviously you're cleaning it. You should be cleaning it. Like that's a daily thing. If you're not cleaning your wiper blade every single day, you need to start. Your wiper blade should be pristine. It should look amazing. And so use that. Or sorry, I read a comment I'm going to need to address in a second. You need to make sure that wiper blade is clean every day and use a lint-free cloth. Because if you leave lint on that thing, you could potentially scratch your printhead. When does it need to be replaced? If it's wavy. If your wiper blade is wavy, you need to swap it out. If it's a nice, clean, straight line, you're good. If it starts to crack, if it starts to show any kind of wear where it's not a clean edge across the top, that's when you would need to swap it out. Okay. With the printhead moisturizer after cleaning. Well, normally you would be using your cleaning solution to clean it. And printhead moisturizer. So we're talking like shea butter. I'm just kidding. Please don't use shea butter. So normally you just need to use your cleaning solution. And I would encourage you to use a cleaning solution that maybe is not heavy alcohol based. Just because it could potentially dry out that rubber. So I hope that makes sense. All right, let me real quick jump back through these. So lots of questions, and that's not a question. Good morning, Frank. Let me jump back up here and go through some of these questions that have come through and talk about some of these stuff. But I hope that explains the general run of the mill of this whole like ink color transfer. Usually comes down to damper issues or just because you wet capped. All right, let's go back up here and we're going to get some of these questions in. So good to know. Thank you, sir. I did finally get my lights up last night. And Greg is on time. Beautiful. All right. Let's see. Let me see the questions we've gotten here. Matuba usually only sees on the weekends after wet capping. Yep. And that's generally the case. You will see it almost all the time when you wet cap, but you will see it sometimes even when you don't wet cap. Carl sees it after he cleans from the wiper. So if it's set up right, the wiper won't cause that. That usually means the failure in your damper. If you're getting it from the wiper blade, it's a failure in your damper. So if you've always wet capped, I would just be cautious to make sure, again, your capping station is depressing about 30 to 40%, and your capping station is perfectly aligned with your print head. I would do that. Just make sure. And yep, no wet capping. And the other thing, guys, wet capping is like if you're not using good quality ink, you might be more inclined or needing to wet cap. So a great ink shouldn't require a wet capping, provided everything's sealing up properly. Let's see. So people are saying generally the first part of December is pretty busy with Christmassy kind of stuff. All right. Let's see. More questions. Sorry, there's a lot of chat going on, so I'm trying to filter through it, guys. Correct. It does not fill up the damper. It doesn't fill up that part of the damper. All right. That's a question on something else. I'll come back to it, Dan. Okay, Jonathan spoke to Epson technician. He said that simple green works well for cleaning. So be careful which simple green you're using, because one of the simple greens has ammonia, and that's not something you want involved in your printer. So, which is the other reason why I get scared when people say use Windex. So I believe it's that there's one that has ammonia and one that doesn't. You want to use the one that doesn't. I think it's the concentrate that doesn't, but just be aware of that. Be careful what you're using. And that's why I generally am not a proponent of creative cleaning solutions. I would prefer you guys use the cleaning solution that is specific to your ink manufacturer. Or I really, really like the DuPont cleaning solution. I really do. It's like my favorite. But there could be some chemical behavioral issues. But yeah, that's why I'm not a big fan of trying other cleaning solutions like Simple Green, like Windex, things of that nature. I just think that there's too much of a risk of grabbing the wrong stuff. And really the cleaning solutions that are made by the ink manufacturers are made specifically for DTF printing and printers. So that's my 2 cents. You want to try other things? You try other things. But I am never going to recommend a non-specific DTF cleaning solution. So, since I'm talking about cleaning, aside from just the capping station and heads, etc., what else do we do regularly? It's a great question, Robin. Daily, what you want to clean is the capping station tops, the wiper blade, and the underside of the carriage. Don't worry about cleaning the printheads unless you see ink building up on it on a daily basis. And the reason you clean the bottom of the carriage, sorry, did I say capping station? The bottom of the carriage. You want to clean the bottom of the carriage because when that wiper blade goes across and scrapes the ink off of the printhead, oftentimes it's depositing it on the bottom of the carriage. If you don't clean that every day, you will get buildup, and sometimes you will get what I lovingly refer to as dingleberries, little stalactites of ink that hang down and drag across your print. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I have a head strike. Nope, you just have ink dangling down and dragging across your print, making a mess. So, daily, capping station tops, wiper blade, bottom of the carriage. Weekly, I would do all the daily stuff normally, yes, but I would clean the print heads. And it's okay to touch your print heads. They are not going to explode because you touched them. However, be careful with them. You don't want to go aggressive. Any of y'all had kids? If any of y'all have had kids, you know that you wipe gently. So treat the print head like your baby's butt, okay? So, I know that's an odd reference, y'all. I get it. So, what you want to do when you're cleaning your print head, let's pretend this is my print head, okay? Get a foam swab, get it wet, and just start at the back of it and pull it to the front. Start at the back of it, pull it to the front. Back of it, pull it to the front. You want to do that for all of the channels. With the i3200, you can actually see the channel strips. i1600, you can see the channel strips. The Mamakis, you can't see the channel strip. So the DX7 printhead, you can't see the channel strip. XP600, you can't see the channel strips. Anyway, so you just wipe from back to front. Do not do this action. Do not do this action. Don't go crazy. And one of the things that can happen is you can get some ink buildup in the edge between the flat part. I'm talking i3200s. In the edge between like the channel strip and the flat metal part, you can sometimes get some ink buildup. If you do, you want to put a little more pressure to kind of work that out and maybe go on the side of the foam swab. But you do want to clean your heads periodically because there will be ink buildup. If you're doing it weekly, you likely aren't going to have that buildup between the channel strip and the main metal part of your print head. Do that on a weekly basis. The other thing I would do on a weekly basis is I would remove your film and wipe the platen and all the area around there. I would also clean off your pinch rollers. And you can clean off your pinch rollers with just a cleaning solution, a damp cloth with just some water on it. Most of the time, that rubber cleans off with just like some water, like a damp cloth. The easiest way I've found to clean the pinch rollers is either take the film out, feed it, and hold down on the rubber on the roller so it kind of feeds around it, and then just let it dry out from like the bottom roller part of it before you start trying to run it again. And then the other thing I will tell you is wipe off your whole machine on a weekly basis. I can't tell you how many machines I see covered in dust. Even if they're like printhead areas doing well, that's great. Like, yes, that's your primary concern. But the rest of the machine having dust, eventually that dust is going to get in there and it's going to cause you problems. So I encourage people to, on the weekly, wipe down their whole machine. Wipe off the top. Wipe off the back rail, like back up here. Check your encoder strip. Clean your encoder strip gently. clean your encoder strip gently, please. But I would do that on the encoder strip. I would do on like a weekly to bi-weekly basis, depending on how dirty your place is. But yeah, that's kind of what I would recommend for cleaning from that standpoint. Your dryer shaker, I would remove your powder every night. At the end of every day, I would remove your powder, because when your powder sits there for too long, it will accept some moisture and it will fail sooner. So if it's left exposed to the air, your powder will degrade more quickly. So what I like to do is at the end of the day, empty out, like brush everything off so it all kind of falls into the bottom. Pull out your tray, put it in a container that seals, whether it's a bucket or a Ziploc bag with a couple silica packs. That's going to be your best bet for that. And I would also open up your dryer lid and I would clean inside of here, because there's a ton of buildup in there. There will be glycerin buildup. There'll be powder that like maybe got stuck to the film and got cured on the inside. Clean that on a weekly basis, guys. It's maybe even on a daily. Wipe it on a daily basis, because I know lots of folks that have had trouble with glycerin dripping on their stuff and getting in the way. So that's my spiel on regular maintenance. We should be treating all of our children the same, but we know the first one gets all the sensitive wipes and the last ones get whatever's left over or whatever's cheap at the time, because kids are expensive. Also, teenage kids are way more expensive than babies. I will just tell you that right now. I saw earlier post about exhaust systems. Are the filter systems getting better, or should you still look to vent outside? The filter systems are good. They've been pretty good. A lot of the systems that I've tested, and I've actually used VOC meters to like test the output of the internal exhausting stuff. And for the most part, they do quite a good job. However, if you do a large volume, you're going to be going through those filters pretty quick. Also, if you notice that your room starts to have a particular odor after 8 hours of printing, like it smells a little funky, and I would like leave the room for a little bit, breathe fresh air, and then come back in, then you'll smell it, because a lot of times you get nose blind. But I'm still generally a big proponent of venting to the outside. Now, even if you have built-in fume extraction, I would still be ventilating your shop as a whole. I think it's important that you're bringing fresh air in, ventilating out stuff, because that's just smart to do. You don't ever want to be in a completely sealed off room where there's no like fresh air being reintroduced. So I would still have some kind of ventilation happening. Just be aware that when you're venting to the outside, you need to have some kind of makeup air, some way for fresh air to get into the system. And so if you're venting to the outside, you need to have at least that same volume of air coming back in. Otherwise, it's not going to pull as effectively, and it's going to create some weird pressure stuff in the room. So I'm still a big proponent of venting to the outside. Even if you have a built-in fume extraction like this does, I'm still a proponent of venting to the outside. I think it's the healthiest way to do it. I think it's the safest way to be doing it. Obviously, some systems aren't set up to hook up to an external fume extraction setup very easily. But that's my 2 cents. I think it should smell wonderful in your shop, even when you're running it full tilt. But like I said, if you're doing external extraction, make sure you have some way of bringing fresh air in. Otherwise, it's going to have issues trying to balance the air. So that's a good question, Frank. And I see it all the time. I see that like there are people that are like love built-in fume extraction and people that hate it. All right. Hey, we got somebody new in the chat. Everybody say hi to Botrix. I love new people that ask questions. So welcome to the circus that is DTF printing. Does ink density matter? Sort of. Can you be any more specific about that question? Because, like, yes, the amount of ink you lay down does matter, because if you can't lay down a certain amount, you may not be able to produce certain colors. But sometimes you can lay down more than is necessary. And so if you lay down more than is necessary for ink, you create a thicker garment or thicker graphic that isn't going to be as soft. So ink density does matter. It just depends on how you're asking that question. Because if I've learned one thing from becoming a G7 certified color specialist, is that the DTF world uses very different terms than the rest of the print world. It's crazy. Like, sometimes I think we're speaking a completely foreign language. But always looking for good 4-inch extraction fan that can handle the heat. So a lot of people like to use the grow fans, like for the pot tents, for lack of a better term. I know you can grow other things with them, but the grow tents, those fans, a lot of people use those. The problem that we run into with those extraction systems is that they build up glycerin. The glycerin condenses higher up in the process. I'm going to get back to this. Yes, the filters can be expensive, but they're necessary. And just build it into the price of everything else. Okay, back to this. So I had an idea that I never got to fully flush out. And I'm happy to let one of you all figure this out. But the issue with the glycerin buildup, and what that t-shirt dude is asking, is the heat and the glycerin condensing. So the glycerin, it needs to cool off enough to condense back into that liquidy, nasty form. But when you have an external extraction, it might not condense till it hits the fan or even after it. And then the whole line system, you're dealing with all this extra glycerin condensing and all, just a mess. What a lot of the external fume extraction, like the ones that look like a wine fridge, they use a bunch of smaller diameter tubes at the bottom. So it comes in, the air comes in this like big square, and then they have these tubes. And what they're doing is they're restricting the airflow so it goes faster because it cools off the air. It is a way to cool off air. One way you can cool off air is by sending it through a narrower passage, because it speeds up the airflow. It's like if you go on your hand, it's hot. But if you go on your hand, it's cooler. And so they're using literally thermodynamics to cool the air to try to get that glycerin to condense quickly. It's not a super efficient way to do it, but it is a way to do it. So I had this idea of using an intercooler. For those of you car nerds that are watching, an intercooler is used to cool the air coming out of your exhaust. If you have a turbo, it cools that exhaust air before it comes back into the system. Or it uses like the intake air, filters it through that intercooler to cool off the air. The idea is that the cooler air is condensed and combusts better, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, that's going into like car stuff. For DTF, if you had an intercooler that you could like run and pass fresh air through it, then the air that's going through is hot, could cool down, and you might be able to get it to condense all the glycerin right there, and then have some kind of like valve at the bottom of the intercooler. So you, instead of the intercooler being sideways, you make it vertical. And then all the glycerin runs down to the bottom of that intercooler, and then you can have your trap or your valve or whatever to release that glycerin right there. And then not only would it condense all the glycerin, but it would cool the air, so you're not having issues with like your fan handling that that heat. So, and I had tested with a PT Cruiser intercooler because it was freaking cheap on Amazon. But I never got a chance to build an apparatus to push fresh air past it. And I think you could really just basically, let's say, I'm going to use show and tell from the crap on my desk. Let's say this is your intercooler and the air is flowing up through here. You just need to pass fresh air across it. So you could basically mount some like CPU fans to push fresh air. So you basically go from the output of your dryer with a little P-trap and a bend with some kind of valve, because you're hoping all the glycerin condenses in here. And then the top goes out to your external extraction system. And you just run CPU fans across this to push that fresh air, which is then going to cool the air that's coming through here. The glycerin will condense inside of this intercooler and just basically work its way out, like kind of drain itself out to that drain at the bottom. That's my idea. I don't have time to figure it out and build it or to test it. If somebody else does have an idea, let me know. But yeah. So that's my spiel on how I want to get rid of the glycerin for externally extracted systems that can handle the heat, which is what Mike's asking right there. All right. Man, I digress on that really quickly. If you are not using a fume extractor, you should have some kind of inline with your filtration system. No. If you have any kind of filtration system, it's got built-in fans. So if you have like the mini fridge or the like the wine cooler type, there's fans in there that are moving the air. You just the inline fans are to pull air. If you have a filtration system, I'm just saying you should have some way to ventilate the air in the shop, like to bring fresh air into the shop as a whole. So even with this, I do want to run, if I'm running this at any like long, like hours, I would want to be ventilating the outside somehow, whether that's just like a standard like ceiling exhaust fan or like a vent hood, like for like a kitchen type exhaust. There's a lot of different kind of, and so that's what I'm saying is if you're using the filtration system, I just want your general shop air to be ventilating and transferring out. You want to bring fresh air in, kick out the air that's you breathing, because you breathe out a lot of CO2. Actually, when I was working at I used to be a music pastor, and our main auditorium had CO2 sensors. So when the CO2 levels got too high, I would kick on a fresh air ventilation system that would bring fresh air in because too many people were breathing out. All right. If you let the inline fan run 20, 30 minutes after you shut off the oven, generally stops most of the buildup. So the buildup happens the entire time you're using it. And it just depends on where it's condensing through the system. I've seen systems where it's condensing all over the place. So there's not a really great way right now to deal with that glycerin. Bought a Panda printer. I don't badmouth any machine. However, I'm not a big Panda fan. A week before it was delivered, I came across your channel and then saw the specs of Prestige R2. Low-key regret buying the Panda P13, but I'm new. Here's the thing. I don't know that the machine is necessarily bad, but I think people put cheap ink in their machines. So if you're kind of getting going on it, I might encourage you to try a different ink in it. Like maybe try the Color Prime ink is not cheap. I will tell you that right now. It's not the cheap ink. DuPont is not the cheap ink, but they're really, really good. And so that's why I recommend them, is because they're great. So you might try a different ink in it, see how that behaves. Yes, I agree they can. However, I think if they're used vertically, it's more likely to run back out. If you look at the way the pattern of the intercoolers are, they're mostly designed to go horizontal. I think if it sits vertical, it will drain out more efficiently. And I did do a couple tests with that. I like poured oil into the end of it, and it did come out the other end. So, but that is something to be concerned about. Plans to buy the Prestige L2. Perfect. Sounds great. Who has a 3D printer? I want a 3D printer, but I have no space. That's my problem. Many shops purchase an inexpensive inline fan every few months because the glycol does damage to them and they breaks after a few months. Yes, correct. A lot of shops that use the grow fans are literally just swapping them out as soon as they die. So if I could like figure out a solution to not have them die, that'd be great. The other thing is, be aware when you're dealing with those 4-inch fans, like those grow fans, that when you reduce down to the size of the output of your dryer, you will reduce the actual CFM that comes through it, because those are not designed to pull harder. They're designed to pull 150 CFM on a 4-inch outlet. But if you close off that outlet, it's going to struggle. So if you are struggling to move the right amount of air, instead of a grow fan, look at a centrifugal fan. Centrifugal. Now I'm questioning how I'm saying that. Centrifugal. Yes. Like centrifugal, but centrifugal. A centrifugal fan, and I'm probably saying that wrong, and I hate it when people mispronounce stuff. I'm going to do it. But a centrifugal fan can pull hard on a smaller diameter. So you can keep the CFM the same. It goes a little, it's like the air speeds up. But if you've never done it before with the big grow fans, when you reduce them down, they reduce the amount of air they pull a lot. So just be aware of that. I like centrifugal fans better because they're more controllable on the actual air output that you're moving. So to print Jeremy's ideas. Oh, that's where you're asking about the 3D printer. Yeah. I had one when I was working at Superstore, and I was making brackets with it. But yes, you would need probably a 3D printer to at least prototype what I'm talking about. All right, what else do we got? Coleman has a 3D printer. There you go. You guys get connected and come up with crazy shenanigans and ideas. Seriously, if I had a 3D printer, I would use it way too much. Mike, correct. As far as I know, no DTF Expo. That was run by DTF Superstore and DTF Printing. And to my knowledge, not happening because there's not much going on there. So, unless I make my own, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. I don't have time for that. I don't have any time for that. My schedule's a little bit bonkers. So if you're trying to install the Grackle 2006 ICC profile, you're installing it not in the actual printer, because the Grackle 2006 is an input profile. So you're not actually installing it in the printer. You're installing it into the RIP software, which I think the Panda uses a different RIP. Like I think they're using either like Acro RIP or something. Maybe they're using Digital Factory. I don't know. If anybody knows if the Pandas are using Digital Factory or a OEM version of Digital Factory, let me know. But yeah, you need to use Grackle 2006 on the input profile, not on the actual printer's profile. That is something that is going to be custom. Yep. Well, hold on, Carding Mania. You're in the UK, so I don't know that I trust your opinion of how to pronounce certain words. Shall we talk about aluminum? Y'all say aluminium. And let's see, what are some of the other fun ones that you guys have? So I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I question your pronunciation. Nissen is my favorite one. because I watch a lot of I watch Top Gear and stuff like that. Watch a lot of UK stuff. I mean, I'm a huge F1 fan, so I get all sorts of British pronunciations. I also find it funny. Sorry, side note. The Haas F1 team, Gene Haas is American. Haas is the way you pronounce the last name. And it sounds like a British, but the broadcasters say Haas all the time. I'm like, they're like Americanizing. It's hilarious. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Honestly, I don't know where they're at right now. I know that Rob Super and American Print and Supply bought them. They own DTF Superstore now, but I don't know what's happening there. I don't have a lot of communication with them at this point. So I know, Mike, me too. I keep bugging my rep, and he's not sending it to me. You certainly can't trust my spelling, but definitely mispronounce aluminum. Proper. That's why we call it English. Aluminium. Really? That's how you say it. Okay. I guess aluminium. I mean, sure. Aluminum. I also think the English language is so dumb sometimes, people, if we're being honest. But anyway. Yeah, if you guys got more questions, get them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll do my normal stuff. This live stream is brought to you by DTF Station. You can see him back behind me. The dulcet tones of my white ink circulation running right now. I love that they partnered with me right from the get-go because they care about the education piece of it. I was actually showing someone this morning thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that question. I will answer it in just a second. I was showing someone this morning the Discord and their tech support through Discord. And they were just completely blown away at how easy it was to access. And the fact they have a lot of videos that show you how to do stuff. I mean, for those of you who have done tech support, like gotten tech support before, how hard is it to have somebody like give you a text explanation of how to do something? It's so much easier when you're shown. That's why I love YouTube, because there's power there, because I can show you how to do something instead of just trying to like email explain it to you. So huge thanks for them sponsoring these live streams, every single one of them. They actually reached out to me about putting one of their UV DTFs in, and I was like, I'd love to, but I literally have no space. I'm maxed. You guys don't see all the stuff that's piled up off camera because I try to make this look halfway decent. But yes, huge thanks to DTF Station for sponsoring. If you have questions about DTF Station stuff, feel free to email me, or you can reach out to any of their dealers. You can go on their website, dtfstation.com, and find a DTF Station dealer near you, no matter where you are in the world. There are DTF Station dealers in Europe, South America, Asia, Australia, all over the place. So I know we have a lot of folks that are watching Karting Manias in the UK. We got a lot of people that watch all over the world. I know, because you all ask me questions and say hello from the different parts of the world. All right, we did have some more questions come in, so let's hit on those. This one, Sublablock. So we're talking about, are we talking about like the dye migration that happens? If that's what we're talking about, two ways to address that. One, get a better quality polyester shirt. That's the first one. The second one is press at a lower temperature. If you press at a low enough temperature, it will not dye migrate. And then you're like, but Jeremy, everybody says I should be pressing at 265 degrees, which can cause dye migration. Guess what? Now I can't find it. There it is. This stuff presses down to 200 degrees. Now, do I recommend going down to 200? No, I don't. But it works. I will show you. I press these polyester shirts. This one was pressed at 220 for about 15 seconds. And it lasts. It is washed. It's been washed, I think, 10 to 15 times, somewhere in that ballpark. But it is fabulous. This flex powder is really great. So it is designed specifically for polyesters for it to be stretchier, but I tested to see if I could press at a lower temp, and I could. So if you are trying to deal with dye migration issues or pressing boxes on polyester, the DTF Station Flex powder is really good. It behaves similarly to what was the Super Plus powder at Superstore when I was there. That could also press at a lower temp, but I don't know if it's available. I don't know if it's still the same stuff that was when I was there. I don't know. So the only thing I can recommend right now is this Flex powder. If there's somebody else out there who has that similar stuff, I'll let you guys know. But right now, the only one I can say for sure, because I tested it, pressing down to 200, 220, it actually pressed at 190, but I do not think you should do that. But the beauty of going to a lower temp is you can do higher pressure. I know people think it's because dye migration and it works with colors, but with whites, I think it's because the white powder not opaque enough. No, the white shows up. The dye migration shows up a lot more prominently on the white. There is literally anything. Yes, white opacity is a big deal, but the white is going to show that dye migration with even just the littlest bit of dye migration. So I'm going to generally assume it's dye migration. If it is from an opacity thing, you would see it on every color. Like you would see it on other colors, not just like on a polyester shirt or something like that. You do even get some dye migration on non-polyester shirts, but generally that's what I've seen. I'm rereading this to make sure I didn't misread this. Yeah, there's no real powder that blocks it necessarily because most of what's being caused is the dye migration. If your white is not opaque enough, try a better white. That's really the best thing I can say about that. But most of the time, it is actually coming from that dye migration. So, all right, more questions come through. Oh, we got the Panda. That's right. They use Pro Rip, which I think is like not. It's not a OEM digital factory. It's something totally different. So, yeah. So their Rip software is not that. Pro Rip is kind of an entry level. It doesn't have a lot of the customizable functionality that Digital Factory and Neo Stampa have. So it's a little lower quality. So you're probably going to have some restrictions on what you can do with it. That being said, the Grackle 2006 is for when you're using CMYK images. And if you're printing PNGs, you're never going to print a CMYK image. So it kind of doesn't matter. And honestly, I think the best workflow for DTF is just doing RGB the whole way until it gets to the Rip and then let the Rip decide what it's going to do with the printer, which means you'd never actually use that Grackle 2006. So I would encourage you to stay in that RGB space. See, I told you guys, people watching from all over the place. From South Africa. Beautiful. All right, let's see. We got a few more questions. Yes. The new Chroma colors from DTF Station are going to be using a different profile because they are different. They are dramatically different. I haven't done a lot of testing with it yet because I had some issues when I first swapped it over. And I swapped it over, then I left town, and then, yeah, anyway. So I haven't had a chance to actually get into it yet. Don't know that I'll get to that before I leave town this week, but it is high on my list to get dialed in. I did download the default profile or a profile from DTF Station for the Color Prime, or sorry, for the Chroma ink to test with, and it worked really well. They actually have it profiled quite nicely, but I haven't gone in and done my testing on it yet. But it will need a different profile because it is different hues. Do I need to do linearization for every print option 4, 6, 8, and so on for ICC profiling? Yes. Maybe not. I mean, linearization is really how the printhead's firing out. I never thought to try. Now you got my brain. You got me thinking. I would just do linearization every time, but I can see how it might not need to be done every time. I would still do it every time, but I will add that to my list of things to test if I have to do linearization, because it is really just how the printhead's firing out. But with the different pass modes, you're technically, and different resolutions and pass modes, you're technically laying down more ink. So it would probably slightly change the linearization. So I'm going to say, yes, you do need to linearize for 4, 6, and 8. But yeah, now you got me thinking. Like, you guys do this to me. You ask me questions that make me question myself. I'm going to say do the linearization, but I'll add it to my list of things to test. Hey, we got another first-time commenter. Thanks for commenting. Sorry it took me so long to get to your question. I have some trouble when I take out my white ink. I was following your video, but not figuring out how. You can. Shoot me an email. colorgamutconsulting.com. And I'm assuming you're looking at my ink swap out video. That would be my assumption. And yeah, the white's kind of a bit of a pain because it has that secondary reservoir up above the dampers where it recirculates from. So the white's a little bit of a pain. It does take a while to get through. That video is like 20 minutes long or something like that. That was like 4 hours of footage, in case you're wondering. All right, let's see. Going back up here. Jonathan, I'll see what they think. Are you gonna make a bunch of videos for them on their UV DTF printer? Let's see. Ooh. So banding, I do have some advice. Frank, have a great week. I do have some advice. Banding is the vast majority of the time an environment issue. So it's usually because your humidity is not in the right range or your temp is not in the right range. That is the most common cause of banding. It's not the only cause of banding, but it is the most common cause of banding. And every time I think that the industry's got it understood that we need to have a properly set environment of 40 to 60% humidity and 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, or 20 to 23 degrees Celsius, if you're of that persuasion, South Africa speaking, which you are. Actually, I think it's 21 to 24, I think is the Celsius number. But every time I think that this industry is understanding it, I run across another dealer that doesn't understand the power of your environment. If you're not controlling your temp and your humidity, you are not doing DTF right. I'm not often blunt about stuff. I'm not often like, there is no other way. If you are not controlling your environment, you are going to cause yourself trouble. You're going to cause yourself failures. You're going to cause a lot of headache, and you're not going to be producing the best quality DTF. So you need air conditioning or heating, depending on where you live. I'm in Arizona. It's chilly. It's in the 50s today, I think. I think it was in the 50s when I woke up this morning. Very cold. You need heat. You need humidity. You need cool or heat. You need humidity. You might need a dehumidifier, depending on where you're at. Now, I will say that it's less likely you need a dehumidifier. There's a few places that do need it. But if you're running an air conditioner or a heater, that is going to dry out your air. So it's more likely, if you're running a heater or a AC that you're just going to need a humidifier. But some places don't need to be running the heater or the AC all the time, and so you would need a dehumidifier. So you need to get those in those ranges: 40 to 60, 70 to 75 Fahrenheit, 21 to 24 Celsius, if I remember my conversion correctly. You need to get that dialed in. That will fix the majority of your banding issues. Again, not all the time, but the majority of the time, especially if you're getting a good nozzle check. If your nozzle check looks fine, it's probably a humidity issue, probably, or temperature. The other thing it could be your feed comp is off. So if you have a Mamaki, they have a feed comp setting that does need to be calibrated periodically. And that's basically the feed rate that it's sending the film through with the pinch rollers. You can also adjust that on the Chinese printers, but I've not seen it cause a banding issue on the Chinese printers, but I have seen it cause a banding issue on the Mamakis. I will never make a video, probably not make a video on banding, because it is kind of like it's not a linear process to troubleshoot banding. It's like if this stuff works, then you should check these things. And they don't necessarily work in order. But the thing is, if you don't do them in a certain order, you might not catch it. You might not be able to find out what the problem is. Because like if you just change your occlusion, you're putting a Band-Aid on it. You're not actually fixing the banding issue. Like if you suddenly have banding happen and you're like, at the end of the day, you're like, I just got to get this one last printout. Jack your occlusion up, slow your printer down, you're fine. But generally speaking, it's environment or a printhead issue or an ink flow issue. Those are kind of the three tiers, I would say. If it's not environment and it's not a printhead issue, like a clogged printhead, then it's some kind of ink flow issue. So you would not object to making videos. Is DuPont ink of good quality? It is. I have heard some people that don't love the white opacity on it, but I've also heard that DuPont is working on an update to their white that has a little bit more opacity. So, but I do think their ink is good. Their CMYK is actually really good. If it's not raining in my DTF room, I'm not printing. Raining? Really, Mike? You freaking rainforesting it up in there? Mike's print room is the new Rainforest Cafe satellite location. Funny story I will tell you. I went to a print shop. Kentucky, Tennessee, something like that. And their night crew, or their evening shift, they had like some high schoolers who printed after school till like 7 or 8 at night, 9 o'clock at night. They forgot to turn off the humidifiers when they left. And we walked in, and there was literally a cloud up to about 3 feet off the ground through the whole facility. Just this like low-hanging cloud. It was hilarious. Craziest thing I've ever seen. Literally walked in and there's just this cloud. I'm like, you got a fog machine? I'm like ready for like this like theatrical lighting. It was crazy. But yeah, I have seen that. And I think the humidity in there was like 85, 90%. It was crazy. Mike says 60% or nothing. I feel you. What I will tell you guys is that a bespoke profile, like a custom built profile for a machine when dialed in properly, can give you more wiggle room in the humidity department before banding starts happening. I've been in shops where they really struggled with banding. I built them like a custom profile, and their banding issues kind of went away. So that's mostly because I was utilizing the printhead a little differently than the default profile. I think that's why it happens, and just the way I'm using the ink. It's one of those things I don't know exactly what's happening, what's going on there. It's causing it to not have an issue. But when I build that 6-pass, because that's the thing, like when you build a 6-pass profile versus a 4-pass profile, if everything's perfect, I can get a 4-pass to look pretty good. But I cannot, in good conscience, set you up with a 4-pass because I know that if things go a little bit off in humidity or a little bit off in temp, it's immediately going to start banding. So most of the time I'm building a 6-pass profile that's kind of dialed in so that even if things deviate a little bit in the environment, it shouldn't be causing you that big of problems. So let's go back up here. Had to really address the environment, climate helps more than you think. It does. It is critical. Like, I can't even express how critical it is. You know what? Maybe Jeremy should make a video on that. What exactly does the step adjust or the step offset do in PrintEXP? That is adjusting. It's kind of adjusting the feed rate to a degree. It's basically saying as the film shifts down, am I shifting enough for that next pass to line up? That's what it's doing. It's kind of aligning the passes to line up with each other, the individual print heads. The head space is lining up the print heads to each other. So it's kind of like it's a finite headspace. The step offset I've never had to change on PrintEXP. It could be that just that's my experience, but every time I do that test print, it never needs to be adjusted. So, but that's what the step adjust is. It's the, if you think the motors are called stepper motors because they're stepping a certain amount, and so it's adjusting and calibrating that. And that's kind of like a fine tune. When I've done the adjustment of the actual X or the Y motor, I've done videos on that before. I think it's if you look up the PrintEXP live stream that I did, I showed how to adjust that. That's kind of gross adjustments, and that will offset over the long period of time. The step adjust is for those finite adjustments within the print heads printing output. Headspace is for the individual or the different heads, aligning them to each other. Sweet. Cardi Mini. Mike, you should go to the UK. It'll be great. In Calgary, it's super difficult. Yep. Because you guys are frozen. You're frozen solid. So you run your heaters 24/7. Side note, I might be coming to Calgary soon. There you go, Mike. Print is blurry. Yep, because it's not quite lining up. Let's see. So yeah, so what you need to do, Robin, is get a really good humidifier. So I like the evap cooler style of humidifier, but in environments like yours, I probably would recommend one of the ionizing ones. They create like this. They got like this little. I'll have to find one and post a link to it. But the ionizing type humidifiers are probably going to be better. And what I would do is I would set it like by your machine. So the bubble that is your machine is getting that better humidity. At 45, it's not terrible. Like you're at the bottom end of that optimal range. Like best case scenario, I want you at like 50, but 40, 45, you can probably do a pretty good job. What printer do you have, Robin? I am wearing shorts because it's not cold here. However, I'm going to the East Coast this week, and it's supposed to be like 20 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which for those of you who do Celsius, I think that's like -2 or 3 to like 5 Celsius. Crazy. What kind of printer do you have, Robin? Like what oh, there we go. Oddly sweet. Yeah, you're definitely gonna want to be pushing closer to the 45-50 range is what I would recommend for best case scenario. Wife has joined the chat. I can't believe you're still alive. It's been a good one today. You guys are like popping off in the chat. Like you guys are popping off in the chat today. Yes, I should make a video. We talk about it. I actually literally complained to her about that one dealer that literally told someone they didn't need to worry about the humidity. And I was like, oh my Lord. I had a conversation with him, but I had to complain to my wife afterwards. My wife is giving you all the update from her. And yeah, Robin, we had Thanksgiving on the back porch. I do not have a big enough house for 28 people to sit inside of it and have dinner around a table. Yes, we had it on the back porch. It was lovely. Yeah, so. All right, I think that about wraps it up. I'm sure somebody will jump in. Oh, final things. I can't forget this. Giveaway. If you want me to come out and profile your stuff for free, maybe if you have a Panda printer and you want that profile, I could come out to do that for free with the giveaway. So if you are in the US only, sorry. If you are in Canada and you want to enter, you can. There just might be some extra cost involved because it's a $2,500 value. That's what I charge for US. So I'll allow a Canadian winner, but it is going to cost more. It's going to cost a little bit more. Just saying. And South Africa and UK, I'm sorry. You are not eligible to win the giveaway. But head over to colorgamingconsultant.com/giveaway. If you share it with other people, like if you email friends and have them enter or other shop owners, you get extra entries. You can get up to 25 entries by inviting like 20 friends or sharing it with like 20 friends. So, you will feed me if I win. If you win, well, that's lovely. On my other printer, I set up a Rubbermaid tub and bought a water fogger. So every time the printhead passes over the Rubbermaid, it would pull up a mist. Yeah, that sounds a little on the extreme side, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And you're in New Orleans. Isn't it kind of like humid in New Orleans? No, it's because it costs like freaking a lot of money to fly to the UK. It's not cheap. It's not crazy. Oh, man, you're in Belize. I told you guys. Freaking global. Have you emailed? I think you've emailed me before. Somebody else from Belize was asking me a question the other day. Maybe it was you. I know, guys. South Africa will be freaking hard to get to. I'm not even looked at what it costs to go down. It's just a lot of flying. A lot of flying. You know what? Do me a favor. We'll just get all of the South African DTF folks. Let's pool it and bring me out there. I'll be out there for a couple weeks. That way it's not crazy. Let's do it. And yes, it's because you said aluminum. However, I wanted Lando to win yesterday, and he didn't. Why did McLaren not pit? Anyway, sorry, I digress. No electronics issues. That's good. I'm glad. I would be concerned about the volume of moisture sucking up in there. That would concern me a little bit, but. 10. You would say that in South Africa, wouldn't you? Oh, we got another question. We do have a serious question. No. I mean, to all my Australian viewers, love Oscar. Lando's my boy. Lando has been my boy since he was a reserve driver, since he was not even a main driver. That dude is, I love him. He's awesome. Okay. Serious question about DTF. Do I have any suggestions for flex powder temperature? I'm using the same powder as yours at 315 for 20 seconds, and I saw it was cracked on my print. It's temperature too high. So usually cracking is happening because it got cured either at too high or too low of a temp. If it's too low of a temp, it's not fully cured, so it behaves funny when you actually stick it on the press. 315 for 20 seconds is a long time for anything. Honestly, like I would probably do about 300 for about 12 to 15 seconds is maximum you would need, even for cotton. That's usually, I actually, most of the time, I'm pressing at like 290. I'm rarely ever at 300. So normally I'm going to press 290 for 12 seconds. That's what I normally do on most stuff that's cotton, or 100% cotton, or mostly cotton. So, yeah. So I would do that, but I would check your curing temp, because I know that I had to bump, if you watch my video on the flex powder, I had to bump up my curing temp to get it to cure properly. It also looks a little different, so I think it was actually curing, even though I didn't like it look like it. But I would just double check your curing temp, and then reduce your pressing temp down to at least 300 for like 15 seconds. I would even maybe try 290 for 12 to 15 seconds. Give that a shot. My wife works for American, so she would know some things. Johannesburg is the farthest time to get to from Phoenix. This would be why we need to get a whole bunch of shops in South Africa or surrounding areas, so I can be there for a while, because that is a long trip. Flight to Belize is actually just 2 hours from Houston. Yeah, Belize is not as hard to get to, that's for sure. But it's still going to be expensive. And if I go to Belize, I'm going to be scuba diving with my wetsuit, which that video hasn't even come out yet. It'll be coming out next week. All right. Belize is on my wife's bucket list to snorkel. Yep, 100%. All right. I think that wraps it up. Guys, we're at an hour and 26 minutes. That's a long one today. But you guys had a lot of good questions and a lot of good banter. And so I will sign you off by saying, have a wonderful week. Have a very Merry Christmas as the season gets going. 15-hour nonstop flight. Yeah, not fun. Have a wonderful week. If you guys need me, shoot me an email. Hit me up. You guys know how to get a hold of me generally. Message me, comment on YouTube, whatever. There's lots of ways to contact me. I am in shops all this week. And so if I am delayed in responding this week, it's because the 3 shops I'm going to are like not far enough to fly, but a long drive. So every evening this week, I'm going to be on the road traveling from one city to the next. So normally I would respond to emails in the evening. So I will be a little longer in my response time this week. But I will see you guys all next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you so much for watching, for commenting. Appreciate you guys. Bye. Have a good week.